yeah, so magically that Selmer guitar has just morphed into a different guitar here because I wanted to bring the frame forward a little bit. Another place that we're going to touch on, still in the world of swing guitar. Now the S word, swing, as long as we've brought it up. So we're going to be hearing about swing with a capital S. That's like Django and Charlie Christian, obviously, great swing players and big band era and small group swing, capital S. But of course, there's also swing with a small s. And that can be in any kind of music. So I especially like to hear, rock and roll bands swinging. And basically that's where we start to get into some subtleties where a piece of music can look the same on the page, but how it's interpreted slightly differently, and also how the interaction is going between the musicians, particularly the guitar player and the drummer, is what's going to determine why you might hear a band play, let's say, a Chuck Berry tune or something like that, and you'll be falling asleep in your beer listening to it, or you might hear another band do the same song, and something is making you move, and that's swing. It's subtle. It's ineffable. It's got to do with like dotted eighth notes that are slightly behind the beat or ahead of the beat, or depending on how the musicians are listening to each other. So that's just a digression, and it's something that I want to get into a lot later on. But speaking of swing, I mean one of the great heroes, sometimes an unsung hero, although he gets sung occasionally, was the great Freddie Green. Is one of my personal favorites. And Freddie was the rhythm guitar player with the Count Basie band, which had at its core what was called the All-American Rhythm Section. Freddie played rhythm for Count Basie. He played four to the bar. This. A lot of 2-note and 3-note chords that would go along with rhythm changes, which was a lot of the stuff that they did, or blues. Never took a solo. There are, I know some of the purists will say, well, actually, Freddie Green did take some. Yeah, there are some recorded examples of Freddie taking a solo. It was fine, but basically what he did was sit there for 40 years and play that rhythm, and what it did was make that band the most swinging band in the country. When you listen to the recordings, you almost can't hear what Freddie is doing, because the way things were recorded in those days, they used few microphones, but also I think the producers of the record and the people that were listening, they were lining things up as to what was important. The soloist would come up closer to the microphone, and the drummer would be in the background. But when you listen to what Freddie Green is playing, it almost sounds like he's part of the drum kit, which is not a mistake. It's the guitar has got, you can strum it. That's the thing that you can't strum a saxophone or a trumpet, but the guitar is a kind of a combination percussion instrument, and it also has tone. So what fun! You can kind of do the rhythm part. That's what we're talking about, and have chords changing at the same time. And if you really lock in with Joe Jones, with the or whoever your drummer happens to be, the guitar almost sounds like it's part of the drum set. You can't really differentiate, except there's a musicality to it. Changes are happening, but it's like this thing. It's like one thing that you're hearing, and that's why these guys were revered. The different members came and went in the band. Count Basie himself was a master of economy. He would throw in a little riff here and there, a little right hand thing, just kind of. He didn't have to do much because the guys that he was playing with were swinging so hard. He would just kind of ride on top of it, and that's the sound that just pulled listeners in and made you made you want to dance. So, oh yeah, a word also. This we've got a different guitar here. This is the Gibson L5. It's an L5 Premiere, which is I think it's a 1940 guitar. Another thing that's kind of fun that I want to get into in this series is actually, and we've already done a little bit of this with the gypsy jazz thing, is actually do some of the techniques on instruments that are pretty close to or exactly what was used, and that informs you when you do that or when you see that done. I think it's instructive because all of these players are affected by the sound of their instruments, and of course they obviously affected the sound of their instruments. So it's a two-way street, but it's not just a frivolous exercise to actually try to get close to the tools that were used in creating some of these effects, and we're lucky, in the studio here to have a lot of these kind of instruments around, and so here's a typical Freddie Green doing rhythm changes kind of thing, and this is this is a very simplified version, and my disclaimer up front is that I'm doing kind of serviceable versions of a lot of these styles, not super deep. I mean, there are places, and this is, this kind of series is to get you started. You find something that really appeals to you, then dive into it, and there are books and videos and things where you can really get into like the minutia in these. But I like having these different techniques ready, kind of on a palette, and you can pull them out in different gigging situations, recording situations, whatever. So like if we think about I'm in A flat here. If we think about rhythm changes in A flat and Freddie Green, kind of like a. So that's just once around, and that's a kind of a 1-6-1-6-2-5 rhythm changes going to the bridge, which in that particular tune in A flat, bridge starts a half step down. Of course, you can start your bridge right where you ended in A flat, or you can go a half step down, or you can go up a third. Of course, there's all kinds of variations on the rhythm changes, but it's that kind of rhythm playing comes in really handy, when you're doing American Songbook, and it's lots of 2-5-1 changes, as you know from all the other courses. This is how these songs are structured. They're not all that different from each other, really. It's just kind of inventive ways of putting those, of working those different formulas based on the blues, based on the 1-6-2-5. So it's nice to be conversant with a technique that you can just pull out, especially when you're not too sure what's going on, but you want to have a nice rhythm feel going on. Let's say you're at a wedding and somebody calls some swing tune, and you want to have something you can play, and that covers a multitude of sins. So anyway, that's another stop along the journey from swing, capital S swing onwards, and